The world's most critical oil choke point is paralyzed. For most of the world, shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has ground to a halt after a series of escalating attacks left the region on a knife's edge. Right now, hundreds of oil tankers and cargo vessels are stuck in safe zones, unable to pass. For the Gulf economies, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and Kuwait, this is a code red emergency. Their wealth is almost entirely dependent on the free flow of energy, and with their oil and gas exports choked off, their main source of income has vanished overnight. In the corridors of power from Riyadh to Doha, this economic catastrophe is forcing them to reconsider everything, including their decades-long security alliance with the United States. Section 1. A choke point in chaos. So, to really get why this is such a big deal, you have to understand what's actually going on in the Persian Gulf. This isn't some classic military blockade with a line of warships. The reality is far more chaotic and honestly more dangerous. This whole mess kicked off after attacks on a handful of commercial vessels sent a panic wave through the global shipping and insurance industries. The risk just got too high. War risk insurance premiums went through the roof, and major shipping lines immediately suspended all routes into the Gulf. The result? An effective blockade for any nation not aligned with Iran. What we're seeing is the weaponization of risk. While commercial traffic is at a standstill, Iranian oil tankers are reportedly still passing through, and Iran's own oil exports have actually increased. Tehran has essentially turned this international waterway into its own private shipping lane, creating a one-way flow of energy that benefits itself while strangling its regional rivals. The immediate consequence is that the vast energy resources of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE are now trapped. With no way to get their primary products out, their storage facilities are filling up fast, forcing a cascade of production shutdowns across the region. Imagine a factory that churns out millions of products a day, but suddenly, the loading dock is sealed. The warehouses get full, the assembly lines stop, and the revenue drops to zero. That is exactly what's happening to the Gulf monarchies. Iraq has reportedly seen its production plummet, and Qatar, a giant in the natural gas world, has had its LNG facilities targeted by drone attacks, causing significant damage that will take weeks, if not months, to repair. This isn't just a disruption, it's a full-blown economic siege, and it was done without a single occupying soldier. It's a new kind of warfare, and the Gulf states are on the front lines, bleeding billions with each passing day. So why does shutting down one narrow strip of water have the power to send the global economy into a tailspin? The answer is all about geography and simple math. The Strait of Hormuz is one of nature's great strategic accidents. At its narrowest point, the shipping lane is only about 21 miles, or 33 kilometers wide. It is the only way to get from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean by sea. There's no other way out. Through this one choke point flows the lifeblood of the industrial world. Before this crisis, the strait handled nearly 20 million barrels of oil every single day. To put that in perspective, that's about 1/5 of all the oil consumed on the entire planet. On top of that, a massive chunk of the world's liquefied natural gas, LNG, about 20% of the global supply, makes the same journey. This isn't just a shipping lane, it's the global economy's jugular vein. The list of countries relying on this flow is a who's who of the global economic order. On the export side, you have the giants: Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and Iraq. Their national budgets, their ambitious megaprojects like NEOM, and their social stability are all paid for by the revenue that passes through Hormuz. On the import side, you have the world's biggest manufacturing hubs. Countries like China, Japan, India, and South Korea are critically dependent on Gulf energy to power their factories, light their cities, and fuel their transportation networks. For decades, the world has operated on the quiet assumption that this flow was sacred, guaranteed by the overwhelming naval power of the United States. That assumption has now been shattered. This crisis has revealed just how fragile the whole system really is. The paralysis of the strait isn't just a regional problem. It's a global supply shock in the making, and we are all about to feel the consequences. For the nations of the Gulf, this crisis is existential. Let's start with Qatar. Before the blockade, it was the world's second-largest exporter of LNG, a critical fuel for Europe and Asia. The recent drone attacks on its primary LNG facilities at Ras Laffan were a devastating blow, not just damaging its infrastructure but also its reputation as a reliable supplier. With production and exports halted, the very foundation of Qatar's immense wealth has been shaken. Then there's Saudi Arabia, the leader of OPEC and the world's swing producer of oil. Along with the UAE and Kuwait, the kingdom is facing the nightmare scenario of full storage tanks. When you can't export your oil, your massive storage terminals, some of the largest in the world, fill up with shocking speed. Once they're full, you have no choice but to turn off the pumps. And stopping oil production isn't like flipping a switch. It's a complex, expensive process that can damage reservoirs and have long-term effects on future output. Every day that production is offline, the economic damage gets worse, and the fallout goes way beyond the oil fields. The Gulf has spent the last 2 decades trying to diversify its economies, building huge hubs for tourism, finance, and logistics. Dubai's Jebel Ali port, one of the busiest in the world, is facing unprecedented disruption. The region's tourism industry, a key part of their post-oil vision, is grinding to a halt as the risk of a wider conflict grows. This crisis isn't just attacking their present, but the future they've invested trillions of dollars to build. This economic collapse has forced a brutal calculation on the leaders in Riyadh, Doha, and Abu Dhabi. They're trapped. Option 1. Fully back U.S. military action to reopen the strait, but that would make them a direct target for devastating retaliatory strikes on their own cities and infrastructure. Option 2. Stay on the sidelines and push for diplomacy. But this path means letting the economic blockade continue, watching as their economies bleed out. Iran's actions have put them in checkmate, forcing them to question the very nature of their most important alliance. While the Gulf is taking the immediate hit, the shockwaves are already spreading across the globe. The first and most obvious impact is in the energy markets. With millions of barrels of oil and huge amounts of LNG suddenly gone from the market, prices have skyrocketed. This isn't a slow, manageable increase. It's a violent price shock that threatens to trigger a global recession. In Washington, panicked officials are reportedly even considering desperate moves like easing sanctions on Russian oil, just to bring some supply back online. But this is about more than just the price at the pump. The crisis has exposed a critical vulnerability in our globalized world: supply chains. The shipping halt isn't just about oil tankers. Container ships carrying everything from electronics and car parts to food and medicine are also stuck. One of the most alarming and often overlooked consequences is the disruption to the global fertilizer trade. Many Gulf nations are major producers of key ingredients for modern agriculture, and a halt in these shipments could lead to lower crop yields and higher food prices worldwide, hitting the poorest nations the hardest. Nowhere is this secondary impact felt more sharply than in Africa. Over the past decade, Gulf states like the UAE and Saudi Arabia have become indispensable economic partners for the continent, pledging tens of billions in investments for critical infrastructure. With Gulf economies now in free fall and their governments forced to divert money to defense and domestic needs, those vital investments are at severe risk. African nations, many of which are also dealing with a spike in their energy bills, are facing a double blow: more expensive fuel and the potential disappearance of the foreign capital they need to build their future. A crisis that began in a narrow strait thousands of miles away is now threatening to derail the development of an entire continent. This brings us to the heart of the issue, the phrase in our title. This crisis is forcing Saudi Arabia's hand. For nearly 80 years, Gulf security has been based on a simple deal with the United States. The Gulf provides a stable flow of oil, and the U.S. provides a security umbrella to protect that flow. Iran's power play has shattered that deal. From the Saudi perspective, the blockade is happening. Their economy is collapsing, and their security guarantor hasn't been able to stop it. This failure is forcing a fundamental once-in-a-generation reassessment of the U.S. alliance. This isn't just talk. We're seeing real signs of a shift. In emergency meetings, Gulf leaders have focused on pushing Washington for de-escalation, not offering military support for more conflict. Behind the scenes, the chatter is even more dramatic. Gulf states, led by Saudi Arabia, are reportedly reviewing the colossal $2 trillion they have invested in U.S. dollar assets. This isn't a threat to freeze trade. It's something far more powerful. It's the quiet threat of capital flight, of pulling the very investments that help finance the U.S. economy. This is their single greatest point of leverage. The crisis has also breathed new life into an idea that's been floating around for years: de-dollarization. Iran has long encouraged its Arab neighbors to break their economic dependency on the U.S., and suddenly, that argument is finding a much more receptive audience. A key part of this would be to stop recycling oil profits back into U.S. Treasury bonds. From their point of view, why should their national wealth be used to finance the very system that failed to protect them? This isn't just about switching currencies. It's a strategic move to insulate themselves from U.S. pressure and reclaim their financial sovereignty. The pressure is also mounting on the military front. There's growing talk in the Gulf of demanding a U.S. policy shift away from confrontation, even using the American military bases on their soil as a bargaining chip. Proposals from Washington that would drag them deeper into a regional war are being rejected. What we're witnessing is the Gulf monarchies trying to decouple from a U.S. foreign policy they feel no longer serves their interests. They're being forced to hedge their bets, build new relationships, and stand on their own, all because their main ally couldn't prevent their worst-case scenario from happening. This is one of the most significant geopolitical shifts of our time, and the story is changing every single day. If you want to stay informed and understand the deeper context behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I want to hear from you. What do you think the end game is for Saudi Arabia and the Gulf? Can the U.S. alliance be saved, or are we seeing a permanent realignment? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The paralysis of the Strait of Hormuz is about so much more than oil prices. It's a crisis that has crippled Gulf economies, sent shockwaves through global markets, and now threatens to break one of the most enduring alliances of the modern era. We've seen how a calculated campaign of disruption in one narrow waterway can hold the world hostage, proving just how fragile our interconnected global system really is. The immediate question is whether diplomacy or military force can reopen the strait. But the much bigger question is what comes next. For Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and their neighbors, the spell has been broken. The guarantee of security is gone, and the need for strategic independence has never been clearer. They're being forced to make choices that were once unthinkable, exploring new partnerships and a new role in the world. We may be witnessing the beginning of the end of an American-led Middle East and the birth of a new, far more uncertain and multipolar order. The world held its breath waiting for a crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, and now that it's here, it is changing everything.